Hello and welcome to another edition of Sun Dragon Tips and Tricks. I'm Rebecca. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in downtown Brevard, North Carolina. And it's Monday, so I'm coming to you from my house. Different room in my house. Had it all set up for sit and stitch last month, virtual sit and stitch that we do. And haven't moved back upstairs yet. I'm going to try it down here. Let me know what you think of this location as opposed to where I usually film upstairs. So, I thought I'd get back to a lot of our foundational things about the butterfly, the Papillon shawl. I have done instructions on the red and orange squares. Now, these squares refer to the box around, the color of the box around the instructions to follow. We've done the green square. I thought today we'd do the blue square. It is kind of the opposite of the green square. So I thought we'd take a look at that today. And for those of you who are persevering with your papillons, fantastic. This one, so Liz calls this a bowl because as you're looking at it, it sinks down. And she calls the blue squares hats because they rise up. Hats or hills, we could call them. We'll see which one. I probably will use both. But, let's talk about how we keep track of things and watch me do one of them. All right, let's get to it. So as always, I'm going to talk about instructions that are in the pattern, but I'm not going to show the pattern because that is Marin's property and you should buy the pattern and follow it because it's amazing. But if you need assistance in how this works, here are some tips and tricks that you can use to keep you on track. So we're talking about the blue square today. Again, at this point, if you finally hit your blue square, you have probably done a lot of red and orange squares, and you have survived your first green square, so congratulations. For this one, the blue square, or what Liz calls a hat, or I sometimes call a hill, because the shape is rounds up. We'll take a look at that over there in a second. Here are some things to keep in mind. Some of these are reminders we've had the whole time for any square, and some of these are specific to the blue square. So keep in mind when you're counting your stitches, only count the knit stitches. Do not count your wraps and turns. The wrap and turn the space, you usually get like a gap. That's created by the wrap and turn. So when you're going back to count your stitches, make sure you're not counting the wrap and turn in terms of the number of stitches you have knit. It will throw you off. I usually look for the gap and I move in one stitch before I start my count to see if I've done the correct number of knit stitches. You are only counting your worked stitches when you're following her directions. Most times, your blue square will line up right over your green square. I want to be really specific, and she mentions it in the instructions. When you're doing what I like to call the stripes, because they're over and back with the bubbles in them, but they create like one stripe all the way across. Number 21, which is not the one I'm about to show you, but it's one that falls between major sections. She says, this one's not going to line up, so don't freak out if it doesn't line up. Pay attention to that. It's really important. There are quite a few times when green and blue squares happen within a section, they stack on top of each other nicely, but not section 21. So please, please, please read the directions. And when it says, this will not line up, she means it'll be a little staggered, and that's okay. Do not think you're off if in section 21 it doesn't line up. All right, so here's how the blue square is the opposite of the green square. The green square started small and grew and grew and grew in both directions. The blue square starts really big and gets smaller. So you're starting with 30 knit stitches, which, believe it or not, involves 4 stitch markers because we have the one we start at, we go 10, get a second marker, we go 10 more, third marker, go 10 more, fourth marker, we have 4 stitch markers. We have 2 at the boundaries and we have 2 in the middle. When you start with 30, you'll get to it. You'll start over here with your first, and by the time you're done, you'll have hit your 4th stitch marker on the boundaries of those 30 stitches. Each row decreases by 2. So you're going shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. You're going in towards that center 10. Now, here's the funky thing about a way to keep track of that. Remember, the wraps and turns are outside of the stitches that you knit. And if this sounds confusing at all, watch us do it later so you can really process it. Just listen right now. Each row is going to bring you to 3 stitches before the gap created by the last wrap and turn on that side. I know it's like, wait, we're decreasing by 2, but now you're telling me 3? It's 2 knit stitches. It will make sense. Then you do, when you're within 3 stitches of the gap created by the last wrap and turn, I would double check with your stitch count anyway. Then when you do your wrap and turn, you'll still have that balance of the decrease of 2. Trust me, it definitely works. Your square is going to end with 10 stitches exactly between those middle stitch markers. Remember that little thing I drew there? This 10 right here, that's the end of your blue square. Remember, your last wraps and turns will be right outside of those stitch markers. And when you're looking back at the whole thing, you will see gaps of only 2 stitches between stitch markers, even though I told you something about 3 up there. Once you've done your wraps and turns, if you've done them correctly, everything will balance. You'll see sets of 2. So let's take a look at a little bit of a drawing I tried of what's going to be happening here. This is, right now, what I'm about to stitch for you, I believe I'm on section 16. So this is section 15 and 14 and 13, that kind of thing. These are the ones that the green square and the blue square are going to stack. So the last section that I did, 15, had a green square. And remember the green squares from our last video, we called them bowls. Or you might want to call them ponds or valleys. Liz calls them bowls. She's done more papillons than me, so she gets to name them. So here is my green square right there. Made it green for you. And contrast rows I'm keeping white right now. They are cream on the current one that I'm doing. If we wanted to, when you're holding it up and looking at where to go, I'm going to color in the sections before this that had red and orange squares creating our little teardrops, our little bubbles on the side. And if we went one more out, they would look like they're going off to either side. So as you're coming along on the wrong side, what I like to call the dirty side instead of the clean side, the side that has a little bit of the bleeding through of the contrast color and the main color is the side we should be traveling on this direction. And then she'll say wrap and turn and we'll start going back and forth. So with the green square, we started in the center. We started down here and we started building out. In the blue square, you're going to go all the way over to the far corner. And remember, on all of them except for 21, except for section 21, you should know you're in the right spot because you're probably going to, the knit instructions should tell you to go all the way over to what looks like the far corner of your bowl and start heading back. And when you build it, it will mirror image. We'll have the top of your hat will be right in here and it will slope in either direction. When it's built correctly, this is what will happen. But your first set of knit a really long ways and then wrap and turn, you should hit a stitch marker at the end of your count of what you should knit. Always keep that in mind. If your stitch markers are in the right place, you should knit right up to a stitch marker and do a wrap and turn on the other side and head back. And you're going to be decreasing each row by 2 and it will make a hump that will mirror image the green square below it, except on section 21. So there is a time when that doesn't happen. Really briefly, I've written my instructions for how I do a wrap and turn. Remember, I love German short rows. I love them when I'm doing stockinette, which is knitting on one side and purling on the other. This, since you're knitting on both sides, I like using a classic wrap and turn because the wrap gets buried with all the what looks like purl bumps, but gets buried with the back side of knit stitches, so you don't have to pick them up and you can blast straight through them. And I think they might be a little easier to see in this project. Different projects for me use different short row techniques. My wraps and turns. You've got your needles. Bring your yarn in front between the needles. Slip the stitch from the left to the right needle. Bring the yarn to the back between the needles. Slip that stitch back from the right needle to the left needle. Bring the yarn to the front between the needles. You will have completely encircled that slip stitch. Turn your work around, ready to knit. You're going to see this a lot when we do it with real yarn. Now, you know me, I like to map out what is happening with these squares and the stitches. I've written this down here on the green square, put it in the middle, and I was going back and forth and up and down and really trying to show you how to do it. I'd like to have it look a little bit when I do it like how the square will turn out. This may get a little bit confusing. We're gonna give it a try. Okay, let's look at it this way. What leads up to your blue square, I'm gonna do under here. This is the right side, is what's facing us right now. And to get to the proper starting point, you have knit a massive amount of stitches on the wrong side, and that number should end at a stitch marker, and then you wrap and turn the stitch that is just beyond, and everything else from here on out in is going to be part of your square. So I'm going to map this out, and I'm going to try to circle the stitches that get wrapped. Now my arrows are going to start building up, and so I will just circle down below in the same color. Since this is a blue square, let's start with the color blue. Your very first step, it's going to say knit 30, wrap and turn. That knit 30, we've got, remember these stitch markers are sets of 10, 10, 20, 30. So step 1 is knit 30, wrap and turn. We're going to be starting from right here. Step 2 says knit 28. Starting from right here, if we knit 28, 10, 20, and then 8 more is going to take us to right here. And then you're going to wrap and turn the next stitch. Step 3, remember these decrease by 2, so step 3 is knit 26. We're starting at this same spot right here. We're going this way. So 26, this is going to be 8. 10 takes us right here. If we keep going, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Remember, it's still sets of 10. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. We're going to go to right here, and we're going to wrap the stitch beyond it. Let's see if we can check on the next one that we should be 3 stitches away from our last wrap, and that includes the circled stitch. I keep trying to make sure I don't have the same color on top of itself. We have step 4. Remember, we're going to be taking 2 off. We're going to knit 24. So we're going to start right here, and we're going to go back this way 24, starting with this stitch right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. If we count this guy, 1, 2, 3, we are 3 stitches away because that's the gap right there. Again, if these pictures aren't making sense, watch us do it in the next section of the video with real yarn. If I knit to here, that means I'm wrapping. My wraps are going to be essentially the gaps. We got a gap here, we got a gap here, we got a gap there. My wrap should be about 2 away from each other. Here, 1, 2, here, 1, 2. All right, step 5, knit 22. And we're going to start from this same spot. Remember, don't count the wrap. Count the first stitch that you do. That's right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. This is where the knitting should come to. And we will wrap the stitch beyond it. See the balance going on here? Step 6, gonna pick a color. Knit 20. We're gonna start right after that wrap and turn, and we're gonna go this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 10 should take us to 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It's right here. We're gonna wrap the stitch beyond that. So we're gonna come over to 20 and wrap the stitch just beyond that. Step 7. Let's see if we can squeeze this all in here, right? Knit 18. We're gonna reduce by 2 every time. We're gonna go in this direction. How far are we gonna go? 1, 2, 3, 4, plus 10. Remember, this is where stitch markers help. That's 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we're gonna go to right there. We're going to go to this stitch and we're going to wrap the one that's just beyond it. See the balance with these wraps. You know what? I don't want our stitch markers to get totally lost in here. I'm going to make them red so they stand out. Let's keep going. I got to start repeating colors, but that's all right, I hope. Step 8, we're going to knit 1 fewer, 16. We're going to start in the same spot and go this way. If we start, don't count your wrap, count your knit stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. 14 if we add another 10, 15, 16. That's our last knit stitch right there. See how these are all getting shorter? And we're going to wrap the stitch that's right beyond it. 9, we're going to knit 14. Oh, we're getting so close. I'm going to squeeze it in here. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to start at that same spot. We wrap this and turned it around. This is our first knit stitch right there. We're going to knit this direction. 14, 1, 2, and 10 is 12, 13, 14. We're going to knit to right there, and we're going to wrap the stitch just beyond it. Row 10, we're going to knit 12. We're going to start right at that same spot, right after the wrap, and we're going to knit in the other direction. 1, 2, and look at this. If we add 10 more to 2, we're at 12 right at this marker. That tells me, when I hit another marker, that tells me that I am almost done. I'm not quite there because I bet you anything that happens on a wrong side and we need it to happen on the right side. Okay, don't worry if it's getting crazy confusing. Watch it too. Look at this. Watch us do it next time. If I knit my 12, it takes me right to the stitch marker. I'm going to wrap the next stitch. I'm almost done because I said a blue square will end when you've done the center 10 stitches and you have wraps on either side. I've got a wrap over here. I don't have one over here yet. I'm not quite done. The 11th row will be knit 10. And I'll start there and I'll go this way. And if I start right here and I knit 10, it should take me right here to the other stitch marker. My last 10 happen right within 2 stitch markers, and I end up wrapping the other side, the first stitch on the other side. That's how I know I'm done. Also, following row by row what's happening in your instructions will tell you when you're done, but this is a way to visually check. If you end at a stitch marker and you have wraps on either side, it means the gaps, believe it or not, are going to be a little further out. The gaps don't fall at stitch markers. Because of the wraps and turns, they fall just beyond them. At that point, though, when you do your wrap and turn, you should end up on the wrong side, ready to take off further down, and you will end up with a hump. This is my version of trying to mark this out on paper, what is happening. Let's go do it with real yarn. My current Papillon, I am on, look, there's my green square down there. I am on section 16. And it says to, on the wrong side, after I've done my increase row, it says to knit 70, wrap and turn. I believe I'm on stitch 62 right here, just past a stitch marker. So if I go all the way up to 70, the good news is I'm right at a stitch marker. That's always good news because these start and end at stitch markers all the time. And I'm also, it looks like, you know, these look like they are centered over, these two guys are pretty centered over the top or the bottom, whichever way you want to look at it, of the green square underneath. This is the wrong side, the dirty side. And right here, here's those 4 stitch markers I was talking about. The one we're starting at, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so I've knit my 70, and then it says to wrap and turn. To do that, I need to slip my stitch marker over because this is the one I'm going to wrap and turn. And those instructions I wrote on the whiteboard. Bring your yarn to the front, slip your stitch over to the right, yarn to the back, slip your stitch back to the left, yarn to the front. Totally choked off that stitch. I'm going to turn my work around. Try not to have my yarn all tangled in there. And I'm ready to follow the next set of instructions. Now, starting my blue square, I want to knit 30. There's 10, slip my stitch marker. 15, 16, 18, 20 takes me to my next stitch marker. That's the third one. It's nice when numbers are working out, right? 29, 30. I'm right at a stitch marker. I need to wrap and turn the next stitch, which means I need to move my stitch marker and then do my wrap and turn. Forward, slip to the right, back, slip back to the left, forward, turn my work around. I don't count this. Whoop! Hey, that happens. Get them back on there. Here's the gap. This stitch does not count. That's a wrapped stitch, not a knit stitch. Now everything decreases by 2. I just did 30, so now I do 28. This part is easy because I still have 10 between most stitch markers. Knitting back to the next stitch marker is going to be 10. That's 10. Knitting to the next stitch marker is going to be 20. That's 20. Slip my stitch marker. I need 8 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I'm going to check a couple of things. Here's the last gap because there's my wrap and turn. There's the gap. I'm 3 stitches away from the gap. That is correct. I'm also 2 stitches away from a stitch marker, not from the gap, but from a stitch marker. You'll always be even numbers away from stitch markers. That's also a helpful thing. So I have to do a wrap and turn. So yarn forward, slip to the right, yarn back, slip back to the left, yarn forward, turn. All right. Starting from where I am, minus 2, we just did 28. So now we're going to do 26. Now here's where the math gets, the stitch markers help a little, but not as much because we don't have an even 10 right now. We're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 takes me to the stitch marker. The good news is I should always have an even number when I hit a stitch marker. Now to the next stitch marker is another 10. So that's going to be 18 when I hit that. Or just keep counting your stitches. Whatever is easier for you. All right, I'm at 18. Slip my marker. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. I'm 2 stitches from a marker. I'm 3 stitches from the gap. That is a good sign. I got to wrap and turn. Forward, slip, back, slip back to the left, forward between the needles. That might be hard to see with this little yarn. I'm going to flip it around. All right. Last one was 26. Remember, we're decreasing by 2s until we get down to 10. So now we're going to do 24. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I can do my stitches properly. 8. Stitch marker. Good. Even numbers hitting a stitch marker is a good thing. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I hit another stitch marker. That's good. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. I'm 3 stitches away from a gap. That's a good sign. Yarn forward, slip to the right, yarn back between the needles, slip to the left, yarn forward between the needles. Turn it around. We just did 24. Let's try 22. We keep decreasing. Remember, you can follow the written instructions as well. I'm just not showing them on camera. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everything's decreasing by 2. That's good. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, slip the stitch marker, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Let's see. I am 3 stitches away from this gap. And look, if you look back here, look, we've got 2 stitches between gaps here. That's good, but don't try to keep track of too much. Just check. Am I 3 stitches away from the previous gap? Yes. Yarn forward, slip to the right, yarn back between the needles, slip to the left, yarn forward between the needles, turn your work. We just did 22, so now we got to do 20. I think we're halfway there. Let's keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm at a stitch marker. Always want to be at a stitch marker on an even count. That's good. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, add a stitch marker, 17, 18, 19, 20. 2 ways to check. I'm 3 stitches away from this gap. That's wonderful. Now remember, if I go back to check my count and see over here we have these gaps and they're 2 stitches away from each other. That's how things should be looking. If I go to the last gap over here to check my stitch count, remember, this first one is my wrap and turn. It's not part of those stitches I've knit. Don't count him. If your stitch count is off by 1, that could be why. So take him out of the equation and start counting right here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. 2 ways to check I'm in the right spot. Yarn to the front, slip to the right, yarn to the back, slip to the left, yarn to the front, turn my work. All right, I just did 20, so now I got to do 18. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good, even number at a stitch marker. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'm at a stitch marker and I went at 10 stitches. That's always good too, because these should be 10 stitches apart. 15, 16, 17, 18. 3 stitches away from the last gap. Forward, slip over to the right, back, slip over to the left, forward, turn my work. Make sure that that forward stayed where it's supposed to be, so now your yarn's actually in the back because you've turned around. We had 18, so now we're going down to 16. Let's try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, right at the stitch mark again, that's good. 15, 16, we're getting really close because we're not far away from those center stitch markers. Here's my 16, I'm 3 stitches away from the last gap. Yarn to the front, slip to the right, yarn to the back, slip back to the left, yarn to the front, turn. Again, if we look back, see these gaps with what looks like 2 stitches between, because there are 2 stitches between each one. That's working well. All right, we just did, I hope 16, right? I gotta keep track too. I don't have my pattern in front of me. So that means 14 now. So here we go. 1, 2, I'm at a stitch marker. That's good. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, at another stitch marker, 13, 14. I'm just getting so close to those stitch markers, and I am 3 stitches away from the last gap on the side. Forward, slip to the right, back, slip back to the left, forward, and turn. That was 14. This is 12. If my math works, we're going to hit a stitch marker, but that doesn't mean we're done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm at a stitch marker when I end my stitches, which is a sign that I might be almost done. However, a couple of things here. I'm on the wrong side, which is when I finish the directions, I should end on the right side. Having just done something on the right side, I just did something on the wrong side because I can see this. This is the dirty side. It's not the clean side, so I'm not done. The other thing is when I finish, I should have the center 10 stitches and there should be wraps and gaps on either side. I'm about to put my wrap over here. I don't have a wrap right here. I'm not done yet. That was 12. I should end with 10. So let's go forward. I already slipped my stitch marker. You notice that? Habit. Forward, slip to the right, back, slip back to the left, forward, and turn. I just did 12, so now it's time to do 10. And I'm on the right side. Let's slip our marker and see where we end up. 1, 2, whoop, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm at a stitch marker again. Now once I do, and I'm on the clean side, I just finished this. What can be confusing is if we do our wrap and turn, we go forward, we slip, we go back, we slip back to the left, we go forward, and we turn. Some people could say, ooh, let's try to get my yarn unstuck, but I'm on the wrong side. I'm supposed to end on the right side. You're supposed to end having just done a right side row. The wrap and turn will kick you back to the wrong side. But if I look at this, if I slip this over, but what we can do, let's see, I do that just so I don't lose my stitch marker. That's going to be the first stitch of my like taking off in the new direction. If we take a look at this, what we have, you're not going to see the rounded shape of it because on your needles it's going to stretch it out straight. But what we have is we have a gap over here. We have our 10 stitches. I know one is here. I apologize if that's too confusing. I have a gap here. I have a gap here. I have my 10 stitches in the middle. That should give me the sign that everything is working out well. And if I want to count my gaps, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on this side. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the other side. It is balanced. That is good. I'm on the wrong side. I can start following instructions, which are going to move me all the way around to, if I can unflip this, gets all tangled, right? But it's not the end of the world. My next set of knitting instructions should move me all the way from here. I'm going to be knitting all the way around. I'm probably going to end up right over here because it has to go on top of this. This bowl has to have a hat. So it's going to take me right over there. And if we flip it over, see, I've got a bubble that mirror images this one right on top of it. Again, until my needles are further away, it won't have quite the nice rounded shape. It'll look flat. That's okay. It's because my needles are pulling on it. So thanks for joining me on the adventure of, let me get some yarn here, of doing the blue square over the green square. Remember, there is one time when these will not match up like this. I knit a little further on my wrong side row to move me to the next blue square I'm supposed to be doing, just so I could hold it up and let you see the shape a little bit better. But that's the one we just did. Thank you also for helping me make a little progress on my Papillon because I've stalled out on it a little bit. But by showing you all a technique, it helps me make progress as well. If you like these videos, please give it at least a thumbs up. If you would like to subscribe, that'd be fantastic. This channel is growing by leaps and bounds. Let me know what you'd like to see a video on. I try to make a video a week. You may have noticed in past weeks I've had to take some breaks. There's a lot going on in life. I'll make them when I can. These take a little bit more editing than our sideshow videos that you can watch on the Sun Dragon Sideshow, our sister channel. So like I said, please subscribe because then you'll get alerts when we do new things. Let us know what you'd like to see a video on. If it's something I have the ability to teach, I'll make a video. We've had some suggestions for things that I don't have under my belt yet, so I can't teach you yet. But you can also support us over on Patreon. If you like the work we're doing, you can do a small to larger monthly fee if you'd like to support us and be a patron. And you'll see a list at the end of this video of people who are already doing that. So thank you all very much. And as I always like to say, may your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. Bye now. Hi, baby. Do you think I should still be filming up here? Where it's warmer? Yes. Maybe next week.